Tau. E te kai kiri mana o ingarangi, Laura, e mihi ana ki a koe. E ngā manu hiri rongonui, a tātou katoa hui hui mai nei I tēnei rā, kei te mihi atu ki a koutou. A ko tataru waita hau, I te taho tōku pāpā no Ngāti Porou, te whānau rua taupari, ko te whānau white, me te whānau hene tāpura, ko te whānau tūhau. I te taho tōku māma no Te Arawa Ngāti Pikia, me Tainui Ngāti Mahanga. I have the privilege of introducing at this session some of your haukainga who are working on the ground delivering, where action speaks louder than words, and they are the decision makers. So it's really, really good in this session. We're going to hear from these implementers of action. And the first one is well known to you, as probably they all are, Manu Caddie. Manu, I did not have a resume for you, but Auntie Google come to the fore. And I know that you've got a background in social development and community development. You have a design degree. You've been advertising in central government and also Westpac banks. You are now the chief executive of Hikurangi Group, and I understand pursuing the sort of biochemical or biopharmaceutical area as your note of expertise, in particular putting Tairawhiti on the map in terms of medicinal cannabis and hemp. I can tell you now from Te Arawa that we have a few growers over there that could come and help you out. and also in Tūhoi, our neighbours next door. Anyway, without further ado, Manu, kei a koe.
Te mihi tuatai, tautoko mihi ki te haukainga, te mano o te whenua, tēnei te mihi honore ki a koutou. Me te minita, te māngai o te whenua ingarangi. Me ngā kaimahi o Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade and other government officials. It's good to be here, and it's not so good to be in such a bright light, but we'll do our best. And have I got a clicker or? Yep. Oh, yep. So, ko ai au, he uri au, te waka o Tainui, Ngāti Haua, Ngāti Whare, Ngāti Pūkenga, and I think there's a mahuta in there as well. But I'm also, I guess, a product of international trade. I'm not sure how many foreign affairs are involved in that whakapapa, but there's quite a few places that people have come from to this place, and just a reflection of, I suppose, the awesome products that can result from international trade. Point this somewhere. We're a little company based in Ruatoria, a couple of hours north of here. We started as a social enterprise, and we like to think that we're still a social enterprise. Our whānau, we're looking for alternatives to industry like farming, dry stock farming and forestry, which while they provide some jobs for people not providing enough and have some collateral damage as a result of the environmental impacts that both have on our whenua. And just over the last week, being on my wife's block, 130 hectares, that's washing off into the Makatote and the Mata and the Waiapu was just a stark reminder of how quickly, and while Ming says time is a material and there's not an urgency, I think there really is an urgency, and we need to find industries that are higher value industries that produce jobs and produce lower impacts on the whenua that is still largely owned by whānau on the coast. So we looked at native bioactives, we looked at indigenous organisms like kānuka, oil and kina, and those projects are progressing. We also looked at the indigenous resource that we have in our whānau and the expertise in growing cannabis. So we started in 2016, our first crop, and got licensed and tried to understand the regulatory environment we could see was shifting, both domestically and globally, and saw an opportunity, I suppose, for our little part of the country and part of the world to participate in what's becoming quite a large global industry, with a focus on pharmaceutical, medicinal cannabis. We did look at hemp, and hemp's on the program, but medicinal cannabis was the only part of the cannabis industry that we could see real opportunity for us on the coast. So we've been pursuing that, and have had a number of firsts. We were the first company in the country to get a medicinal cannabis license in 2018, and have been working very hard to stay ahead of others, and have progressed quite a long way, and were able to participate in the setting of the regulations for the new medicinal cannabis scheme that came in on the 1st of April, and help shape those to ensure that they were as inclusive as they could be for whānau Māori. And we've also had a little bit of input into the shaping of the draft bill that's the question in the referendum. And again, if you've seen that, you'll see that Māori benefit is a priority in terms of the allocation of licences, and we like to think we had a little bit of influence on that. But it's about our whānau, and it's about creating jobs on the coast, particularly around Ruatoria. And to do that, New Zealand is always going to be a small market, and so we've had to make sure that the company is globally focused and has opportunities to grow. And so we've got this sort of production strategy around really premium product, and with a focus on Germany initially. We've signed our first export deal with a German partner, and I'll go into a bit more about Germany, but there's some reasons that we're focused on that. At the same time, we want to also be supplying New Zealand patients with affordable product, and we see this as a way of being able to do that. New Zealand's good at breeding and agri-tech. Cultivation is an area that we're putting some effort into. Technology. We're opening our facilities next month that sort of, when Ming talked about quality, this is the pharmaceutical quality production. It's not food grade, it's pharmaceutical grade, which has been a huge effort over the last couple of years to get that ready and be able to participate in the pharmaceuticals industry. So having a pharmaceuticals company based in Ruatoria came with its challenges, and we've had to make some compromises along the way, but Germany is focus. It's a large market, it's an ageing population. Most of their prescriptions are subsidised fully, so that unlike New Zealand, medicinal cannabis is actually affordable and accessible there. It's growing at 50 to 75% a year, which is huge. And New Zealand has this mutual recognition agreement that MFAT was part of negotiating. And so we have an opportunity where the New Zealand regulators approve our product that should automatically be accepted in the EU. Unfortunately, it's not quite that simple, but this certainly, if we didn't have this in place, it would be a much, much longer road to market in the EU. And we have some questions over the relationship with the UK and that MRA, how much of that's going to apply post-Brexit. Some other markets we're looking at, there is some opportunity in Asia, particularly Japan, maybe South Korea and Singapore. The UK has some opportunity, Poland, Brazil, Australia, and potentially Israel, though it has some ethical issues with it. If you've been to any of this, is in Vienna, and sitting in there listening to the representatives of different countries, the international drug policy environment is complex and really well behind science and social positions for many parts of the world. So there's an opportunity, I think, there for New Zealand officials to do much more on some of these antiquated, outdated international agreements around drug control and trade, and the human rights abuses and public health issues that are being neglected and the human rights cases abused under the auspices of the these drug policies. And there's some really terrible stories of people being killed and persecuted in the name of the war on drugs. New Zealand has this referendum. We've looked at the Canadian situation, and I think the legislation that we've got is largely based on that, and some opportunities to reform our situation with drugs in New Zealand. And we know that Maori disproportionately impacted negatively by the prohibition that we've experienced for the last 50, 100 years, and so this is an opportunity to put some of that right. And it was great to see the New Zealand representative in March, just before lockdown, taking a strong position in some of the, particularly Russia and China and the States are very backward in their thinking around drug policy, and we'd love to see some more movement there, and again for New Zealand to sort of take its position as an international leader in human rights and ethical public policy at that global level, understanding that it's sort of down the list of priorities perhaps, but there's a big opportunity there. So just see 3 questions that I guess we have to ask is APIs are, and there's a lot of acronyms in there. Active pharmaceutical ingredients aren't covered by the MRA, and it would be great if that could be, and the EU officials were over here in December, and we're still waiting on their report, so if there's anything MFAT people can do to move that along, it would be great. We do have that question around the status of the MRA with the UK post-Brexit, and what commitment does the New Zealand government have to reform global drug policy. Kia ora.
Opportunity for any questions? Anyone got any questions out there? There's really bright headlights straight over here. Any questions? Okay, Akwe. You got a microphone over here? I'm getting a tan in this light.
Yeah, I just got a simple question. Is the licences for medicinal cannabis, is that open to other iwi? Or is
Open to other iwi?
Well, other, yeah,
Yep.
other ecosystems.
Yep. So the medicinal regime is there, and it's a bit clearer now than it was previously. And so from 1st of April we can do commercial licences. Up till then it was just research licences, but anyone can apply for a licence. They're pretty simple to get. The challenging part is, as I say, that pharmaceutical manufacturing. So we're talking to grower partners around the country who may be able to supply our factory here. And so there's those sort of opportunities. If you don't want to go through the rigmarole of setting up a pharmaceutical facility, you can still grow in a pharmaceutical way. And the good news is that we've had some tests done recently. It looks like we're going to be able to grow outdoors as well as indoors, which was just going to make things a lot cheaper. And again, New Zealand's got quite a progressive regulatory regime now around that stuff, so there's opportunities there for us to supply product that's going to be much more affordable than growing it all indoors.
Kia ora. Thanks, Manu.
More questions? Oh, I actually have one for you. I was very serious about Te Arawa and Tūhoe having some growers there, mate. I mean, the reality is that we have a lot of growers out there, maybe not necessarily legitimised by the system, but certainly legitimised, very experienced growers. Very serious question. Do you see a role for our growers out there coming to the party and being legitimised in another way?
Yeah, as I say, that was really the driver for us, that many of our whānau have had to look over their shoulders for many years to grow the plant that provided some supplementary income, and for others it was their staple income. That is at risk under a legalised regime, and if the referendum's successful, and so there's quite a lot of support and interest in going into the legal cultivation. Unfortunately, the medicinal, because it's pharmaceutical, it's going into sick people, there's a lot of rules around that stuff, whereas under the referendum legislation, it's going to be more of a food grade product, and I think the barriers to entry will be lower, so more of our whānau will be able to set up their own facility with varying levels of security. The government will still be worried about diversion, but I think under that regime there'll be even more opportunities. But under the current regime, under just medicinal pharmaceutical, there's still opportunities, and that's where we are talking to potential partners around the country. And as I say, open, broadacre, low THC, high CBD varieties can be grown anywhere.
O mai te paki anō. Oh, we got one more question over here. We'll take one more.
Kia ora, Manu. You know, thanks for that. Certainly don't doubt that you guys are doing a wonderful job for the whānau at home. But my question was really off the back of Ming's conversation about mana and, you know, making sure you buy licenses and not buy shares. And I wondered in terms of your presentation around the amount of Māori development and where do we as hapu and whānau sit within the scheme of the corporate world of that entity, and how do we make sure we add value so that we are actually not necessarily just the people growing cannabis, but we're actually building our capacity and capability to actually be more than that. So yeah, I just sort of wondered how we all fit in that particular space.
Yep.
And therefore, when I hear Ming's conversation around time, I totally agree and understand, because the reality of time, for me as a person who's from Te Aitanga Mate and still lives on the homelands of Wharepunga, it is very scary to be part of commercial development and wondering on the old foot around how do you protect the integrity of what little land you have left and that sort of stuff. So I'm intergenerational, and it takes me a long time to jump, and I just feel very concerned around how do we do an and so we both win. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Yeah, there's quite a lot in there, and we can follow up afterwards. But as you know, we did go out to the community to begin with to give locals the opportunity to be the first shareholders in the company. We'll have another opportunity later this year that will prioritise locals who want to be shareholders in the entity. And at the moment, the largest shareholder is still the locally owned entity, and so a good chunk of the company is owned by a charitable entity, which has opportunity for marae hapu to also be shareholders in time. So there's opportunities there. Certainly around job creation, you know, we're trying to find an industry that in bioactives was our focus because it has such a low impact on the whenua compared to most others that are there at the moment, and it's high value so that we can create jobs that pay well above the existing average wage to whānau who live at home, and it's been great going into the kura, into Te Waiu, into Te Ngata, to talking to students there about the opportunities that they have to work at home, to be, you know, if they go and do science, if they do engineering, if they do horticulture, and marketing and accounting, there's a range of opportunities that we're going to be providing, and we already are providing. We've just recruited someone from Waipiro Bay who's been working away out of the rohe for most of his life. He's a very talented and experienced person that we're able to provide a job back home for, and he's very excited about bringing his whānau home. So we're seeing that intergenerational shift happening already, and we're not even at the start line yet. It's, you know, the commercial licenses haven't been issued yet, so we're unable to actually generate revenue until we hope to have it in the next couple of weeks. But that's really just getting us to the start line, and there's still a big future here, and hopefully, you know, well down the track, our mokopuna and Uri will be able to look back, and there'll be, you know, even if it fails, you know, it's still a high risk venture. Even if it fails, there's been massive learning for us through the process, and we can apply that to other ventures going forward.
Kia ora. O mai te paki anō. Next up needs no lengthy introduction. She's an icon of perseverance and socioeconomic development in the Tairawhiti. Obviously, maybe carry a lot of wounds in the process, as they all do when you've been that long in the game, Ingrid, and you're still there chairing Whangara B5, one of three that come under the farming group and Whangara farming group. And so, without further ado, Ingrid.